Meditation is not merely a method of relaxation. It is a disciplined return to inner awareness. At its heart, it is the practice of becoming present to what is already within you, rather than being endlessly pulled by the outer world. To understand meditation properly, we must see it as a practice of consciousness, a way of training attention so that the mind no longer rules by habit, distraction, and reaction. As this practice develops, awareness begins to deepen. You start to see thoughts more clearly, emotions more clearly, and even your own patterns more clearly. With that awareness comes clarity. You become less confused by surface appearances and more able to recognize what is true, steady, and real within yourself. This naturally begins to create calm in daily life. Calm is no longer something that depends on circumstances being perfect. Instead, it begins to arise from within because you are no longer reacting to everything around you in the same automatic way. There is more space, more peace, and more order in your inner world. And ultimately, meditation is in alignment with inner stillness. That stillness is not something you manufacture. It is something you uncover. Beneath all the noise of the mind, beneath all fear and restlessness, there is a quiet center. Meditation helps you return to it again and again until it becomes a living reality in your life. Meditation is, first of all, a practice of focused awareness. It is the intentional directing of attention, rather than allowing attention to wander without purpose. Most people spend much of their lives pulled from one thought to another, one concern to another, one distraction to another. Meditation interrupts that pattern by teaching the mind to rest in a chosen point of focus. One of the essential parts of this practice is learning to observe thoughts without attachment. Thoughts arise constantly, but meditation teaches you not to become entangled in every one of them. Instead of following each thought as though it were a command, you simply notice it. You let it appear and you let it pass. This creates a profound freedom because you begin to realize that thoughts are events in the mind, not the truth of your being. Meditation also involves returning attention to the present moment. The mind often drifts into memory or anticipation, into past regret or future anxiety. But life is lived in the present. Spiritual awareness is found in the present. Each time you gently return your attention to what is here and now, you strengthen your capacity to live consciously. Over time, this becomes a training of the mind towards stillness. Stillness does not mean the total absence of thought at every moment. It means that the mind becomes quieter, less reactive, less scattered, and more obedient to awareness. It becomes a servant rather than a master. That is one of the great spiritual values of meditation. Meditation matters because it reduces stress and mental noise at the source. Much of human strain does not come only from outer conditions, but from the uncontrolled activity of the mind. Constant worry, constant analysis, constant emotional reaction all create inner tension. Meditation quiets that movement and allows the nervous system, the emotions, and the mind to begin settling into order. As the mind becomes quieter, focus and clarity improve. When attention is scattered, perception is distorted. When attention becomes steady, the mind can see more clearly. You begin to think with greater precision, greater calm, and greater wisdom. This makes meditation not only spiritually valuable, but also deeply practical in daily decision-making. Meditation also supports emotional balance. Instead of being carried away by every mood or reaction, you begin to witness emotional states with more awareness. This does not make you cold or detached in a negative sense. Rather, it helps you remain centered. You can feel deeply without becoming inwardly ruled by every passing emotional wave. And beyond these practical benefits, meditation deepens spiritual awareness. It opens the way to a living recognition that there is more to you than the restless surface mind. There is a deeper life, a deeper intelligence, a deeper peace. Meditation helps you become receptive to that deeper dimension, and that changes the whole quality of life. One of the first things meditation reveals is that the mind constantly produces thoughts. This is its normal activity. Thoughts rise, shift, connect, repeat, and multiply. For many people, this happens so continuously that they assume they are those thoughts. They live in total identification with mental activity and rarely question it. But meditation begins to show that thoughts are not the self. They are expressions passing through consciousness, not the essence of who you are. This is a deeply spiritual realization. If thoughts were the self, then your identity would change every moment. But there is something in you that remains present while thoughts change. That deeper presence is closer to your true nature than the thoughts themselves. Awareness is what observes mental activity. It watches the mind without becoming the mind. The moment you can notice a thought, there is already a part of you standing apart from it. That witnessing awareness is one of the great keys to inner freedom. It allows you to experience the mind without becoming trapped in it. And when you stay with that awareness long enough, you begin to discover that stillness exists beneath thought. Thought is on the surface, stillness is beneath it. The spiritual life begins to unfold when you realize that peace is not something added from outside. It is already present underneath the movement of the mind, waiting to be recognized. The breath is one of the simplest and most powerful anchors in meditation because it is always present. You do not need special equipment, a special philosophy, or a complicated process to become aware of it. Wherever you are, the breath is there, quietly sustaining life and offering a point of return. When you focus on breathing, attention begins to stabilize. The mind may still wander, but now it has a clear place to come back to. Instead of drifting endlessly, awareness returns to something real, simple, and immediate. This repeated return builds concentration and helps train the mind in steadiness. The inhale and exhale also create rhythm. There is something deeply harmonizing about this rhythm. It reminds us that life moves in cycles, not in chaos. Breathing has a natural order, and when we become conscious of it, we begin to resonate with that order. The mind often becomes calmer simply by resting in that quiet rhythm. The breath also connects mind and body. So often people live divided within themselves, mentally overactive and physically tense. Breathing with awareness helps reunite these aspects of experience. Attention settles into the body, tension eases, and the whole being begins to come into greater harmony. That is why the breath is such a powerful spiritual doorway. The basic practice of meditation begins with posture. You sit comfortably, but also with a straight posture. This balance matters. If the body is too loose, the mind may drift into dullness. If the body is too rigid, tension may build. A poised, upright posture expresses both receptivity and alertness. It is a physical reflection of inner readiness. You then close your eyes or soften your gaze. This is not done as a ritual for its own sake, but because it helps reduce outer distraction. It allows attention to turn inward more easily. The world outside continues, but for these moments you are choosing to withdraw from its constant demands and become present to the life within. From there, you focus on your breathing. You do not force it or manipulate it. You simply observe it. You allow the natural breath to become the center of attention. This simple act begins to gather the mind from its scattered condition and bring it into a more unified state. And when attention is distracted, as it surely will be, you gently return. This gentle return is essential. Meditation is not a battle against the mind. It is a training in patient redirection. Each return strengthens awareness. Each return builds calm. Each return is an act of quiet spiritual discipline. In meditation, thoughts will naturally arise. This should not be treated as failure. It is simply the normal condition of the mind revealing itself. Many people become discouraged because they think meditation should mean an instant absence of thoughts. But the first stage of meditation is often becoming more aware of how active the mind already is. The important thing is not to resist or engage those thoughts. If you resist them, you feed them with tension. If you engage them, you follow them into distraction. Either way, attention leaves the still point of meditation. The wiser path is to let thoughts come and go without struggle and without participation. This is where you learn to acknowledge and release. You notice the thought. You do not pretend it is not there, but you also do not give it power. You allow it to pass through awareness. This teaches detachment in the healthiest sense. You begin to realize that you are not required to chase every mental impulse. Then you return attention to the breath. This return is not harsh. It is peaceful, steady, and faithful. In spiritual terms, it is a form of inner obedience. You choose again and again to return to presence rather than be ruled by mental wandering. That repeated act of return gradually transforms the whole inner life. Meditation becomes powerful through consistency. It is far better to practice daily, even for a few minutes, than to practice once in a while in a long and irregular way. Spiritual growth is built through faithful repetition. Small daily acts of alignment often produce greater results than occasional dramatic efforts. It is helpful to choose a quiet, comfortable space. This does not have to be elaborate, but it should support inwardness. A calm setting helps the mind settle more readily. Over time, that space may even become associated with peace, making it easier to enter meditation with less resistance and less distraction. You also build the habit gradually. There is wisdom in allowing the practice to grow naturally. If you try to force too much at once, the mind may resist and the the practice may feel heavy. But if you begin simply and remain faithful, meditation becomes more natural and more welcome as part of life. That is why consistency is more important than duration. 5 sincere minutes every day can begin changing the texture of consciousness. The regular return matters more than the length of any single sitting. Through consistency, meditation moves from an activity into a way of living. One of the first benefits meditation brings over time is increased mental clarity. When the mind is no longer constantly crowded with unnecessary noise, perception sharpens. You begin to think more clearly, discern more wisely, and see situations with less confusion. Problems that once felt overwhelming may begin to look more manageable because the mind itself is less chaotic. Meditation also supports greater emotional control. This does not mean repression. It means that emotions are no longer allowed to dominate the whole field of consciousness. You feel them, but you also witness them. You remain grounded while they move through you. That creates maturity, stability, and freedom in daily life. Another benefit is improved concentration. Modern life pulls attention in many directions at once, and many people lose the ability to remain deeply present to one thing. Meditation restores that ability. It strengthens the mind's capacity to stay with what matters, rather than constantly drifting into distraction. And perhaps the most treasured benefit is a deeper sense of inner peace. This peace is not borrowed from circumstances. It begins to arise from contact with the deeper ground of being. It is a peace that remains available even when life is imperfect, because it is rooted in spiritual awareness rather than outer control. Meditation is not meant to remain confined to a quiet chair or a formal session. Its true purpose is fulfilled when you begin to bring awareness into everyday activities. Washing dishes, walking, speaking, listening, working, resting, all of these become opportunities to practice presence rather than unconscious habit. A simple way to do this is to pause and observe your breath throughout the day. In moments of stress, confusion, irritation, or hurry, one conscious breath can interrupt the momentum of reaction. That pause may seem small, but spiritually, it is profound. It creates room for awareness to lead. As you do this, you become more able to respond instead of reacting. Reaction is automatic and often driven by old conditioning. Response arises from presence. It is more thoughtful, more balanced, and more aligned with wisdom. Meditation gradually changes not only how you feel inwardly, but how you meet life outwardly. The goal is to maintain presence throughout the day as much as possible. Not perfectly, but increasingly. Little by little, awareness begins to extend beyond the meditation period into the whole of life. This is when meditation becomes truly transformative, because it begins shaping character, conduct, and consciousness in a lasting way. There are common challenges in meditation, and restlessness is one of the most familiar. The body may want to move, the mind may want stimulation, and impatience may arise quickly. This is not unusual. In fact, it often reveals just how accustomed the mind has become to constant activity. Meditation gently exposes that pattern so it can be transformed. Another challenge is difficulty focusing. Attention may drift repeatedly, but this should not be met with discouragement. Every time you notice the drift and return, you are strengthening the practice. Focus does not appear fully formed. It develops through repeated, patient effort. Many people also struggle because they expect immediate results. They want peace instantly, clarity instantly, transformation instantly. But spiritual growth rarely works that way. It unfolds through faithful practice. The fruit appears over time, often gradually, but deeply. And finally, people often overthink the process. They analyze whether they are doing it correctly, whether they should feel something different, whether the experience is quote-unquote working. This mental interference can become its own obstacle. Meditation invites simplicity. Sit, breathe, observe, return. The more simply you approach it, the more naturally it unfolds. The great spiritual truth behind meditation is that stillness is always available. It is not something locked away from you. It is not reserved for a few gifted people. It is present now, beneath the surface movement of thought, waiting to be recognized. Meditation is simply the means of becoming aware of what has always been there. Awareness transforms experience because it changes your relationship to life. The outer world may still contain challenges, demands, and uncertainty, but awareness changes how those things are met. When you live with more presence, presence, you live with more clarity, more peace, and more inner authority. And as with all worthwhile things, practice leads to mastery. Not perfection in a rigid sense, but deepening stability. What begins as an effort gradually becomes natural. What begins as a practice gradually becomes a way of being. Meditation shapes the inner life through repeated contact with stillness. So begin today and continue consistently. Do not wait for ideal conditions. Do not wait until the mind is already quiet. Begin where you are. Return daily. Stay faithful to the practice. In time, what seems like a simple discipline may become one of the deepest spiritual foundations of your life. If you find this training helpful, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video. And be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook using the links provided in the video description below. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, be magnificent.